Hey, welcome to the Relentless Positivity Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Martin. Got an awesome guest today. Her name is Clarissa Kristjansson. And some people saw it Kristjansson, but not me. I call it Kristjansson. She's an internationally recognized menopause coach, and she's a mentor as well. She's a neuroscientist. That's pretty impressive, right? She was a corporate leader, but she suffered burnout, and during her own perimenopause, it set her on a different path. And that's kind of why we're here today. She's a host of her own podcast called Thriving Thru Menopause. She's a keynote speaker. She's a best-selling author of the book, The Mindful Menopause. And Clarissa, thank you so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Joe, for inviting me. And we made it across the time zones.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of math going on behind the scenes. You listeners don't get a look at. So tell everybody where you are right now.
I live in a small rural community about 2 hours south of Oslo on the Swedish west coast.
So that is slightly different than North Alabama, where I'm from. So we had to figure that out. We got to figure it out, though. So she's here now. So let's just get into this. So let's start here. So maybe people are seeing these symptoms right now. They don't know exactly what it is. What are the most common symptoms of menopause?
Well, great question, Joe. And the most common symptoms, of course, is hot flashes.
Right, yeah.
Because about 80% of women will have that sometime along this journey. But what we also really recognize is things like mental health now, that brain fog, anxiety, mild depression are really the things that are giving women the hardest time, plus the fact that you can't sleep very well.
Wow. Yeah, you have any of those apart and then you put them all together. That's a tough time right there. So when does typically menopause start? Is there an average age and how long does it last?
Right. So there isn't an average age, but there's a common age.
Common age. Okay.
So
yeah.
Most women will start to feel their symptoms somewhere in their mid-40s. They will be full blown in this change of life in their early 50s, and sometime around, early to mid 50s, it's kind of over for most women. But there are women who can start much earlier. You can be a teenager.
Oh, wow. Well, how common is that? How common is that?
Well,
I've never.
Very small,
Okay.
Very small. But some people are born, it's genetic, and they never have a menstrual period. They never have that. So they basically just go from being a child to being in menopause.
Wow.
And obviously, if you have cancer, and you have, for any reason, a full hysterectomy, you'll obviously can also be tipped into menopause. If you have a full hysterectomy, that's guaranteed. And if you have cancer, you can have chemically induced menopause. And so those people can be any age really when that happens.
Okay. So what are the three stages that you see in menopause?
Well, the first is perimenopause, which is really when your symptoms are happening, right? So that's when we're saying, gosh, I'm having a hot flash, I'm putting on weight, I feel really anxious, I don't know why. That's when your hormones are fluctuating and changing, and they're actually going down, because that's what's happening. You're getting less of the hormones, your periods are going away, and your perimenopause. Then there's menopause, and we use that term as, one word, but it's really the day 12 months after your last period.
Okay.
So it's really just one day, but we use that word. And then after that, you're in a post-menopause phase. So by then, you're not having any periods, but you could still be having symptoms because your hormones haven't gone to their sort of final resting maintenance level that you're going to have in the rest of your life. So you could still be having the odd hot flash, still struggling with sleep for a while. And that can take up to another 3 or 5 years before it's fully sort of smoothed out.
Okay. So you mentioned hot flashes. When do you really need to start paying attention to the hot flashes?
For a lot of women, that happens at the last third of their perimenopause. Now, not everybody, because we're all unique and we're all different. So, there's somebody could have that could be the main symptoms they have, and that's the only thing they have straight away. But you need to pay attention to them, and you need to pay attention to them because there can be other reasons why you have them than just menopause. They can be related to your cardiac health, your blood pressure. They can be related as well to insulin issues in your body, and that's just not good if you're insulin resistant, and then you start to get hot flashes. So pay attention to them. Lots of women have them. They're annoying. They go over. But for some women, they can be serious. They can keep people awake at night. They can be very uncomfortable. And if you're having a hot flash 15, 20 times a day, that's exhausting.
I bet. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Is there a way to prevent these hot flashes or at least lessen the symptoms? Is there anything they can do? What can they do?
So there's a few things you can do. The most effective thing for a hot flash is hormone therapy. Mm-hmm. That is one of the key things that can really help you, but also making sure that you know what triggers your hot flash. Drinking wine, coffee, stress. These are all things that can bring your hot flash on and make it worse. So being really aware of that. So I often say to women, track your symptoms. There are lots of really great apps out there. They will give you some indication of what's going on, and change what you can change yourself, as well as working with your healthcare provider.
Oh, that's great. I like that phrase. Change what you can change, right? Take back control. So I like that. So if someone is looking at maybe getting hormone therapy, where would they start? I mean, obviously your doctor, but where would you go from there? What are some resources that you have?
I think it's always good to go to somewhere like the North American Menopause Society if you're in the US. If you're in other parts of the world, places like the British Menopause Society, and maybe decent medical sites in other parts of the country, in other countries, because they'll have factual, correct information. They'll say what hormone therapy is, what the regulations or guidelines in your country are, because they're not all the same. Different countries have more or less strict different levels of training of doctors, but they are reputable sites. They're not written by a blogger or anyone else. Go there and read what's right for your country, because that you can then say, if your doctor then says, no, I don't want to give you can say, well, hang on a minute, in the guidelines it says X, Y, Z about this. So I'd like to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's good to have facts, right? In this world, and that's super important. And I like how you said X, Y, Z. That was very cool. I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna start using that. In Alabama, not many people use that, so I'm gonna be the guy. So there's obviously, when you're not sleeping good, nothing's good, right? So what are some tips for you? Someone going through hormone therapy or anything like that they need to get a good night's sleep. What are some tips on that?
So first of all is good sleep hygiene. And that goes for anybody.
Right. Yeah.
That having a room that's cool, winding down before bed. So not a great idea to be surfing your iPad or phone 2 minutes before you want to go to sleep, and turning off lights, just preparing your body to go to sleep. But of course, if you're in menopause and you're super suffering with anxiety, it might be good to start having something like a meditation practice so that you get yourself more wound down, more relaxed before bed. And it's good to have a body clock that's working right. So in the morning, you want to get out and get as much sunlight into your eyes, because that'll help tell your body, hey, it's morning. And then when it's dark, it's nighttime. And unfortunately, we have a lot of screens now that we look at, and a lot of blue light. And the other thing is, if you can't sleep, don't worry about it. Just rest. I've just done a great podcast episode, which is coming out soon, with Dr. Kat, and she's a specialist in sleep. She's a chronobiologist. So she's all about how your body works with sleep. And she talks a lot about being kind to yourself and just accepting, because actually getting rest, and the rest you can get, is better than no sleep.
Right. They're just sitting there being so angry about it and tossing and turning and clenching your fist up that never works anyway, right? I'm sure that's easier said than done, but that's something that's a goal to kind of shoot for right there. So, another one of the symptoms is weight gain. How can people deal with the weight gain that comes with menopause?
Yeah, that is the tough one. And a lot of women really feel that one, right? So there's like, oh, I have put on weight. I don't know where it's coming from. The important thing is to exercise, and to exercise to build up muscle, because part of what's happening is that we lose muscle mass. And of course, muscle burns more energy than fat does. And we want to do that. We want to get rid of that excess weight. Be on a plant-based diet and make sure that you eat enough. A lot of women, when they put on weight now, go, okay, I'm not eating anything. And the poor body goes, oh, you're never going to feed me again. And they just hang on to the weight. So we want to do the things we can. So eat enough protein, more protein than we maybe do fat. And obviously things like cutting back on the sugar and all the things that we know are good at us for any time of our life. Be extra vigilant about these now.
Yeah, and you mentioned how mindfulness can help go through the period of menopause. Tell me how mindfulness can help you through this process.
Well, most of menopause symptoms start somewhere in your brain. Most people think they start in your body, but it's a lot of the changes in your brain, which is why you're anxious and you can't sleep and your heart and you can't remember things. Mindfulness is brilliant because it changes your brain, reduces your reactions to stress, dials back anxiety and depression, helps you to sleep, and it helps you to focus and concentrate and be able to meet and control your emotions better, which are all the things that are going not quite right.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't mean it fixes your hormones, but it's a really good helper to smooth your path through this time of life, which does end.
Right. So what would be a good place to start for that? How would you suggest someone start with that?
You can start using an app. 10 or 15 minutes a day, Headspace, Calm, they're all great places to go and just give yourself 10 minutes. And that is a really, really easy way for anybody to start, or even just give yourself a minute to sit down and have a breath in the afternoon or in the evening before you sort of go to bed. But if you want to learn mindfulness, learn with a teacher, because a teacher will show you a lot more and you'll get more out of it. And there are lots of great courses online in the States. You can sign up to them, or you can sign up to them anywhere in the world. And they're either free or they're very low cost entry.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, and that's from a neuroscientist right here. This isn't just someone that thinks it might be a good idea. She knows what she's talking about. So, well, you mentioned in the beginning that mental health is one of the side effects that kind of shows up. So, how do people deal with that? How does it kind of show up? Is it in depression, or how does it particularly show itself?
It's anxiety is the really big one, right?
Okay.
So I think that's the one and of course, anxiety and depression tend to go hand in hand. Unfortunately, that's the way mental health usually works. And I think what shocks us in menopause is the fact that you might never have been anxious before in your life. You might have been someone who never struggled and suddenly struggling with crazy anxiety. I think a lot of the time we can help ourselves with things like mindfulness, but I would recommend, if it's getting really tough, to go to a therapist.
Absolutely,
and to
yeah.
have help. If you can't manage it by changing your lifestyle, getting out into nature, practicing mindfulness, and it's not getting better, then a psychotherapist who works with whatever techniques work for them. The cognitive behavioral therapy is strongly recommended, but I also think that acceptance commitment therapy, compassion focused therapies are really, really useful. And having someone to talk to is important.
Right.
And if you are someone that has had a history of anxiety and depression before menopause, you need to be extra vigilant. Sometimes women will be prescribed particular types of hormone therapy if they have a history of really serious depression, because unfortunately this is the age group that women take their own lives. It's the highest percentage of committing suicide. So if you know you're at risk, or if you feel your mental health has spiraled out of control, you have to seek help. And it may be antidepressants, but often it's special hormones that work the best.
Okay. And just know it's okay. It's okay to not be okay, right? So that's what people need to realize. And getting help is the best thing, no matter what you're going through, right? So you've also some great resources. Hey, I've brought a lot of the bad side of menopause out, right? So I've been setting up this whole thing. But let me tell you so this is kind of where you come in, your expertise. How can this be a positive experience? We talked about all the negative. How can this actually be a positive experience?
We sure have talked about the negative, and that's important because we don't need to suffer unnecessarily.
Right.
But part of the way is how we see this time of life. If we think that it's the end, right, then we're going to be very negative. If we only listen to negative stories, and let's face it, there are lots of pity parties all over, Instagram and Facebook. It's good to have the facts. It's not good to constantly listen to everybody else's negative experience. So it's a change, and it's a big change of our lives, and it takes a place sometimes over a long time. But the thing we can look at is to see how amazing the opportunities are, because once this is over, women's brains upgrade. We get more creative, we get more focus, we drop a lot of the anxiety. So I think seeing it as a bit of a journey, looking for the good bits, sometimes the funny bits, because sometimes, you lose your car in big car parks and, you've had a bit of a crazy time. So I think seeing that in positivity and connecting with other people who are going through it and who are positive and who lift you up. So I think it's tough, but it's not the end. It's a big process, but it can be so amazing on the other side. And look at strong women who are older, who are role models, and think, wow, they've come through this, and look where they are now. And so many women starting new businesses, writing books, podcasts, doing amazing things in politics post-menopause, so they are your role models. Look to them.
That's so important to see the light at the end of the tunnel and just know that, hey, they've been through it, so I can get through it too. So that's
sure.
Great advice right there. So thank you so much for coming on. If people want to work with you, if they want to find out more about you, if they want to listen to your podcast, tell us more how they can reach you.
You can reach me on my website, which is ClarissaKristjansson.com. Really easy. It's just my name. And my podcast is called Thriving Thru Menopause. We release an episode every Tuesday. You can find that on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I have lots of awesome guests on there, bringing lots of expertise from many different angles to help you in menopause. And as I said, to thrive, not just survive.
That's awesome. It was not all negative. I know I brought 90% of the show was negative today, but hey, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Please follow. I'll link all of our information in show notes. You don't have to. I'm telling you, you're not ready to spell her last name yet. I'm just going to put that out there. So I'm going to link that all in show notes. Clarissa, thank you so much for coming on and explaining it all. There used to be a show called Clarissa Explains It All or something like that. So hey, thank you so much for coming on and giving people hope and positivity about stuff that they're going through that so many go through and they can get through it too.
Thank you, Joe, for having me. It was my pleasure to be here and talk to your listeners.
Absolutely. You have a great day.
You too.